Hey guys, it's Stephanie, and you are tuned into the review of Love at First Flight, Season 1, Episode 5. So, this is the episode where I'm actually really starting to warm up to this show. It took me a few episodes to kind of figure out, what was going on and the couples, and I feel like these episodes are like jam-packed with a lot of stuff. So kind of just figuring out where each couple is, what they're doing, what the goal of their activity is, and how it ties into where they are in their process. Took me a little while, but I'm getting it, and this episode was jam-packed with a lot of stuff. I believe it was the trust episode. So we find all the couples in Vegas, which, Vegas is synonymous for Sin City, and, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas and all of these things. And so they decided to bring the couples to Vegas to kind of exercise their trust. What I'm starting to see, what I'm starting to like is the activities, although, they may seem a little foreign to us, do tie into where each couple is based on their interactions and their relationships. So let's kick it off with Alma and Michael. So Alma and Michael, they're starting to get closer as we see. This episode showed that they had a lot of really good chemistry. I've been missing that from them. I've seen like a really good friendship building, which I guess is a good foundation, but I was missing kind of that romantic chemistry, and this episode showed me that there's potential there, and I really like seeing that. They work well together. Usually there is one that is stronger than the other, and we've been seeing that it's been Michael that has been stronger than the other. I'm sorry, it's been Alma that's been stronger than Michael in a lot of the activities. So this episode, they were told to go to the casino and basically double their money. And if they double their money from $1,000 to $2,000, then they were able to stay in a luxury suite for a couple of nights. And if not, they were going to stay in a motel. So obviously, we want to stay in the luxury suite. This is where you see Alma completely out of her element. She doesn't gamble. She doesn't know anything about it. She's never done it before. She thinks it's ridiculous. And I get that. I probably would be the one who would pass that off to my significant other, or if I was in this experiment, the other person, because I don't know how to gamble either. So she kind of was just like, listen, this is your element. We see Mike kind of light up. He is lively. Vegas is the place for him. He's been there, a bunch of times. This is where he likes to go. You see him like light on his feet, having a good time, very casual. And I like seeing him take the lead. Alma doesn't know anything about it. She says, hey, this is your arena. I'm going to like follow you. And he takes the lead, and he is very good with her because, as you can see, during the episode, even though she tells him to take the lead, she's not really good at letting him take the lead. She's not really good at trusting him in this exercise. For her, the whole gambling thing is like absolutely ridiculous, and she just is so scared that it'll go wrong. And here's the thing, the irony is it's a gamble. It may work, it may not. Him being more comfortable, he gets the high off of the risk, and he gets the reward. He's been there before. He knows you kind of have to risk it to win it. And so he's playing, but he also goes along her pace. Even though she has no idea what she's doing, she still kind of helps him, make decisions based off of where she's comfortable. Where I thought she struggled was she's wanting him to lead. She's wanting him to kind of pick up the slack where she lacks, which she has done in the past, as we've seen, but she is not really willing to like trust him, and she's making it not a good time, okay? She struggled a little bit. It could have been an easier time. She had more fun as they were winning, but the lesson here is to find a way to deal with things when they're not going so well. Even reflective of relationships, how are you dealing with your significant other or your spouse when things aren't going so well? Are you still respectful? Do you still enjoy each other? Do you still care about another? Or is your actions reflective of the state of the relationship? So you could see her have this up and down motion. He went along with her. He guided her. He went where she was comfortable. And eventually they won. And that helped her trust him. which was good. I really like seeing that. I just want in the future for her to kind of take things as they are and not make them much bigger than what they are. Worst case scenario, they could have ended up in a motel. But, you know, I hate to be corny, it's more of the journey and not the destination here, because whether they won or they lost, what would have stuck with them is the experience throughout getting there. So I think that's important for her to see here. I was glad to see him kind of go at her pace. He could have became frustrated because, she was a little up and down, and it could have, maybe blew the wind out of his sails for that experience, but he had a good time, and they won, so that was exciting. And then later on, you see them do another activity where, mission accomplished, something in the desert. I really don't even remember what it was. It was like land sailing or something. But they had a really good chemistry and they won. And at the end of that, they kissed each other. Well, he kissed her, but she received it. And I was like excited to see that, because I think they're two good, really good people who probably would have not found each other, because they probably just don't run in the same circles. They come from different backgrounds. People from different backgrounds find each other all the time. But we also tend to kind of group up with what we know. And so they probably wouldn't have found each other. We saw in, the first episode where she was like, I don't know if he's my type, etc. So we're now like seeing two good people really like let their guard down a little bit, have a good time, get to know each other, and have some chemistry. And it was really nice to see them just have that little spark of chemistry and it be well received on both ends. One of the things that Alma discussed she was struggling with throughout this episode was him saying he still liked to party, he still liked to club, he still likes to do all these things. And he's 31, and I forgot how old she is, but she's around that age. And she says, if he likes to do these things that I like to do when I was 19, I'm going to have a problem with that, because that's not the type of husband that I want. And so they have this conversation in the car about it, and, they come to a really good place. But I just wanted to point out that, if you're looking for someone to kind of settle down with, you can't really judge them on their single self, okay? So she's kind of judging him on his single self. He can do whatever he wants to do, no matter what the age. I mean, 31 is relatively young. If he wants to party and have a good time and he's single, there's nothing wrong with that. It's what is he willing to, compartmentalize or compromise, or maybe do away with moving forward in a relationship with someone that he really cares about. So she needs to kind of be open to where he can be, not where he is now, because where he is now is perfect for who he is. Single Michael. And that is something that we all need to kind of look for. If you're single and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this person for me? Don't really gauge it on what they've been telling you. Yeah, I partied hard the last, X amount of days. Well, the last X amount of days they've been single. So it's about the potential and the reality of who they're willing to become for the sake of the relationship. So that's all that I would say for Alma and Michael. I like seeing them. They're progressing very nicely. The next couple, Stephanie and Michael, I'm loving to see them too. They have a really good thing going on. They're comfortable around each other. I've been saying, they have fun together. They match kind of the background in faith. She is letting her guard down. She's letting her control down. And this episode was indicative of how further along they're moving. Michael is showing more of his, serious side, and not serious like not fun, but kind of like, this is who I am as a man, and kind of exposing her to layers, beneath him. As we know, the episode was trust, so he kind of touches on the fact that he had been cheated on in the past, and, they kind of joke around talking about, why men cheat, and, this whole thing around cheating. But they were still able to have a conversation that was, fruitful and funny. They made light of it. It didn't become this big thing. They were just having the conversation and talking about their different, thoughts behind it. Their activity was doing something with zombies. I think like it was an adventure-based thing where they had to kill zombies. I think it was like a warehouse or something. She reacted basically the way that I react. I would kind of pass the buck to, my significant other and say, handle that. Why that's so great for her is because she is usually the one who takes up the slack. She's usually like the alpha, probably in all of her relationships, friends, family, romantic relationships. She probably takes the lead on that. And she's not used to letting her guard down, being taken care of, being protective, and then like being happy in that space. Because if somebody's usually the alpha, then they struggle, even when they want somebody to kind of take the lead, they struggle with not taking the lead, and they also struggle with being comfortable and relaxed and not taking the lead. And we found that, where she was kind of freaking out because it's like zombies in the dark, jumping out and you had to kill them. And I probably would have shot everywhere. Like, I just, that's not an activity for me. But he kind of like jumped in front of her, was, killing the zombies and taking care of it. And she was able to relax, and mission accomplished. So it was good to see them have a good time together, and good for her to see, hey, we are in a space where we're past the friendship zone. They both kind of acknowledge that they're kind of feeling each other in that way, and I can trust him and I can be comfortable and be taken care of. They have a very interesting conversation about being celibate. And I think he's working towards that, or beginning to think about that. And she is in that space, and they're talking about the books that they're reading. This is huge because a lot of people aren't, and that's fine, to each their own, but a lot of people aren't. And I would say more so, a lot of men aren't. So to find a man who is kind of in a space where he's recognizing the power of sex, and I could do a completely different video on that, but the power of sex and how, distracting sex and the energy of that and lust can be to what may or may not work, to have somebody that you can gel with, especially from a woman's perspective, that's really, really difficult. So the fact that they meet in that way is huge. Like, that was like fireworks for me, because I was like, wow, there's a way for them to really connect on something that a lot of people don't meet at, and they can help each other, and maybe they can build a fruitful relationship. I'm hopeful. Like, I'm just a hopeful romantic. So they can build a fruitful relationship that stems from some of their same values, and enjoy each other, and give each other room to grow in the way that they both need, and then who knows what happens. So that was really good to watch them kind of have that conversation and meet in the middle like that, and just have a good time. So that is Stephanie and Michael. I'm looking forward to see how they transition to that romantic phase too, because I feel like it's coming soon. I don't watch the previews because I don't want it to like cloud my judgment in the moment of doing my reviews. So I'm hoping that it's coming soon, but I feel like it is. So that is Stephanie and Michael. Jenna and Cale, they were pretty good to watch this episode as well. I think they had kind of a breakthrough moment. So as we've seen, Jenna and Cale have struggled. They're very different people, and we know that they're matched for a reason, but we have struggled to see how, and we've gotten in the last episode or so, we've gotten like a couple of bits and pieces as to why. Especially when I watch this, I tend to hear what's not being said, see what's not being shown. So when I pick up on stuff, I'm like, okay, maybe they'll connect in that way. But I think to the average viewer, it's kind of hard to see, okay, why were these people put together? And so they have a trapeze activity where you can tell, Jenna throws herself out there, and she's very easy in this episode. And Cale is a little more timid, even though he's excited. He even talks about how he used to do some sort of acrobatic gymnastic type of thing. He's still a little apprehensive to kind of jump out there, but when he does very well. So you see them do that. There's another activity where they have to basically break down an entire car. They're in a construction site, which looked like a lot of fun to me. I think that would be like a great way to get a lot of aggression out. But first they have to kind of spray paint the car with kind of negative, characteristics or attributes. And so initially the activity is not starting off on the right foot, because, Jenna in her, carefree way puts haters as one of, the very first thing. And, Cale, who doesn't communicate that well, kind of takes it introspectively, thinks she's talking about him, and then puts bad attitude on there. And then it goes all the way to the left because then she picks up on the fact that it's about her. And so she's like, listen, this initially wasn't about you, but you're saying this is about me, and I really don't want to go tit for tat. Gold star for Jenna for literally putting the lid on that, because it could have gotten to an ugly situation and it could have ruined the entire activity and probably the rest of the day. But she was very mature in saying, I see what you're doing. That's not what I meant. And I'm not going to allow myself to engage in like a tit for tat and the next word be about you and vice versa, because that's not the space that I was in. So he writes something, I think it was manipulation, and he basically says because he was in a yo-yo relationship with an ex that really hurt him, which is totally understandable, and so that's kind of why he's so guarded and it's hard to let people in, which was such a breakthrough moment for him, because that means that he's letting his guard down. And she has also been asking for that the last few episodes about him, really since the very beginning. about him letting his guard down, being open so that she can build some trust. So a lot of times we tend to mimic each other's behavior, good and or bad, in relationships. So because he opened up, she opened up. And so she wrote the word drugs on there, and she talked about having a relationship with someone who used drugs, saying that at the time he was sober, and then after they broke up, he got back on drugs. And you know, that is, people with substance abuse history or who have engaged with someone in substance abuse history can be very traumatized because it's a very tough situation to deal with. So it made me look at her in a different way, because it's like they have a lot of things that kind of create who they are, which we all do. But now that we're getting to see little bits and pieces of it, it gave me more patience about some of these things that I've seen at the beginning and then moving forward, because it's all stemming from something. Cale turns 30 in this episode, so it was very nice to see Jenna put together a dinner. You know, she's starting to care about him. She gave him the rose quartz that she bought back in Sedona, and he was so taken aback by it. You know, he got emotional, and I just would love to sit with them and just dig into their history, because there's a reason why there's so much emotion there, and it was good to just see them just be themselves, actually enjoy each other. And he's saying, man, we could have done this whole time. Like, why weren't we enjoying each other? We actually get along very well. And you see her start to let her guard down. And I would say, you know, everything happens for a reason. A lot of people roll their eyes at that, but that is very true. I think that had they not gone through what they've gone through, maybe they wouldn't be in this very honest place. You know, they have pretty much started out by seeing the worst of each other. So there's only one way from down, and that's up. And I see them going up, and I really enjoy their dynamic. And I'm just hoping that it just gets better. What we expect to see from Jenna and Cale is continued honesty, I think, because I don't think they have a problem, even though they might struggle every night and every time in communicating it. I don't think they have a problem in, you know, not being their best selves and kind of keeping it surface. Like, they've been there, done that. So I hope to see like some sort of spark from them. Right now I'm getting like a slow build of a friendship, which is great. So that is Jenna and Cale. Last but certainly not least, if you've seen this episode, it is Ryan and Stephanie. So Ryan and Stephanie, they had an interesting activity. To me, except for the alligator thing, they pretty much have had some pretty good fun activities, somewhat easy activities too. So their activity was to go to a Magic Mike show, and let me take that back. Their activity was to reenact a Magic Mike show. So they went, and the Magic Mike dancers kind of, you know, performed for her, and then he was to reenact that. And of course that's got to be somewhat uncomfortable. Like, I don't care if you're a good sport, it's got to be somewhat uncomfortable to see that. And so he definitely says this isn't his first lap dance, and so he basically shows them up as best as he could, and he even introduces a new move, and he, you know, does a really good job, and they have fun. And so later on, I don't, if there's another activity, I really don't remember it, because, you know, what I'm about to say is pretty much what I can remember for the two of them. But later on, they go to a Magic Mike show, and this is where things go damaged. This is where things get very damaged. Okay. It gets it goes from very fun to very disrespectful, I would say, from my personal opinion. So they're sitting up there, they're having a few cocktails. And now remember that, because alcohol changes things. So if you're spending time in a new relationship and you've never, you know, gotten drunk with someone, I mean, even if you don't get drunk, if you've never had, you know, several drinks where you are somewhat inebriated, you really don't know what that person is like in a different context. So it's important to be aware of that and to be careful, because that person is now impaired. So it brings out a completely different beast, and we don't know. It could be fun, it could not be fun. So of course the cameras are there, and I think the cameras probably facilitated Stephanie getting lap dance after lap dance. The first one was, you know, fine. Ryan was sitting there, he took it on the chin, you know, he pretended like, I think he was pretending like it wasn't that big of a deal. The second one came, and he kind of played along and threw dollar bills on them, and, you know, made it all fun. And Then a third one came, and the third guy kind of said, here, hold her drink. And I thought that was kind of like disrespectful because it was just like very diminishing, but he took it on the chin. And then the fourth one came, and the fourth guy kind of tried to do the same thing, and he just couldn't take it anymore. And these lap dances aren't like grandma's lap dance, if there's a thing, okay? They are real deal, very intense, very hypersexualized lap dances. And if you looked at Stephanie, you wouldn't have known that she was with anybody. I mean, there was zero awareness. He's on this side of her, so that's why I keep holding my hand up here. But there was zero awareness that there was somebody right here, that she came with someone. She never looked and saw if he was comfortable, or looked to see if he had a problem with it, or there was zero awareness to his feelings at all. And I think that's really important, because whether your spouse or significant other is there or not, there has to be an awareness of, what would my spouse think? Would they have a problem with this? And that takes you so much further than the person actually being there. But if they're there, it should be an easier thing. And it seemed to it seemed to be a non-factor, is what I found for her. So she had all these intensive, hypersexualized lap dances. And, after number 4, he got up and he left. The only thing I will say about how Ryan handled that, because he pretty much shut down for the rest of that night, was that he should have, as he started getting elevated, he should have said to her, listen, I'm not comfortable with this, out of respect, pretty much don't do it anymore. Because we're talking about effective communication, and people are going to do things in relationships where they might be super unaware, and you have to set that boundary if they can't set it themselves. But on the flip side, I was talking to my husband about it, and he was saying that, he would do this, and he feels like maybe Ryan was kind of, watching and waiting to see who she is without having to set that boundary, because I'm not always going to be with you. So if you don't have an awareness for yourself, then how far would it go if I wasn't here? Because clearly it's gone extremely, I think most people would be uncomfortable by number 4 or number 1. It depends on who you are, and how, intense and in your face that was with someone that you're with. So that happened. I think she was completely out of line, to be honest. I think beyond 1. And once again, it depends on who you are, because some people wouldn't, would say, no thanks. Because I think the first dancer said, do you mind if I whatever? And she could have said, no thanks. And if she said yes to 1, she could have just said yes to 1, depending on the space that her partner was in. But there was no awareness of that. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And she's completely oblivious. And she's upset that Ryan's shutting down on her. And she gets very emotional. And although I do understand her being upset about Ryan shutting down, that's pretty much the only pass I'll give her in kind of wanting an effective communication. But other than that, she was completely out of line. Personally speaking, she was completely out of line. And I completely get why Ryan felt the way that he felt. And if we take it to the next morning where they have a conversation, she kind of blurts it out, listen, I was completely disrespectful. It shouldn't have happened. It was 4 lap dances. I get it. And you basically see Ryan shut down. And Ryan is pretty much saying, there is a question mark about a relationship and marriage with this type of person. And she says, I'm a good girl, and I don't know if she should have said that. It's too soon to say you're a good girl right now. But, he just doesn't want to hear it, because in his mind, he is remembering these lap dances, and he's thinking, they probably had a lot to drink. And, I would be thinking, how far would it have gone if I wasn't there? Because clearly it went far enough. And he's just thinking, maybe she's not the type of person that I'm going to be with. So right now, things kind of hang in the balance. I think his feelings are very valid, because they talk about, oh, we're really getting to know each other and things are so great, but it's really been I don't even know what day it is, but I don't think it's beyond 2 weeks at this point. So we're talking about all these new things, new experiences, new feelings, new people, and then we're being, held down by kind of the history that we've experienced. And so he's thinking, someone cheated on me and all these things. And so he's trying to navigate himself in a space that doesn't allow his past to pull him back, but doesn't keep him from going to the same thing and experiencing the same thing or something worse. So now he's very guarded, understandably so. And she doesn't really know what to say. And I think alcohol did play like a large part in this, which is why if you know you can't control yourself, you need to put, there was just a lack of boundaries all around. Like, because I would say the more she drank, the less she cared. But then I would think probably you should cut yourself off at 2 or something if you just know, because then it brings about all these other situations that really make things worse. And regardless of being inebriated or not, it doesn't matter. Your spouse or your, significant other doesn't care that you were inebriated. In my mind, it's like, well, you shouldn't have gotten inebriated. So there's a lot going on here, and it's way beyond the surface. So we've been watching Stephanie and Ryan kind of coast. They had a couple of pseudo disagreements. It wasn't that big of a deal. And now we've kind of hit something that is very big of a deal. And it also ties into his past and her past as well. It just happens to be that he feels, the one who is the victim of this experience. So there's a lot going on. I'm looking forward to seeing how they turn it around, if they turn it around, if he opens back up. Because right now, as the episode ended, he pretty much was shut down. You can totally see it in his body language and his affect. He was completely shut down and doesn't really trust her. So we shall see. I mean, this season is getting really good for it to be the very first season, and having all of these elements. There's a lot of elements at play here, but they're tying in together really well if we kind of look for the bits and pieces. So I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think and click subscribe, and I'll see you next week.